We all do.
And so, all right. Hey, all right, Devante. Here we go. Oh, this is great. But hey, Devante, thank you so much. This is my friend Cyrus Simmons.
Iris,
He's
how you
doing
feel?
over here at Johnson Ferry Baptist Church. And so my friend Lee Taylor and I were talking one day, and I was sharing just about how, me, I'm a one-trick pony, how committed I am to just kind of stuff. And so he mentioned Cyrus coming on staff. Corn, would you love to meet with Cyrus, do some leadership stuff? I'm not quite sure how much of his leadership, other than me, just the older guy trying to share a couple nuggets with the younger guy, and then learning some things. He has muscles too, Devante, like you. And so, sorry. And so I know I embarrassed him. And so really the whole idea, Devante, as I said in the email, I thought if I'm going to do something, one of the things that I want to make sure is that people have access to people that look like them, who love Jesus, who are running things. And so part of my way in the midst of the world we live in is I can allow him to access to some people I know via Zoom. And so we had a chance to meet with my friend Tamika, who's kind of overseeing training for Young Life. About a month ago, we were going to meet with my friend Art, who's out running Issachar in Denver, but it was July 5th. Who knew it was a holiday? Who knew?
It's the observed holiday. Yeah.
Didn't think that went through. And so today is with you, Devante. And so I'm just glad he get to meet you. And I'll let you go ahead, and Cyrus, I'll let you say a little bit about yourself. Then Devante, you can introduce yourself, and then we'll go into our conversation. But let me pray. Devante,
Say it again.
think I can be praying about for you as I pray?
Continued wisdom and strength. I think that's
Okay.
a good one for me. Yeah.
Is that what we saw today? And it worked.
Yeah, hope so.
Thank you, Devante. Okay, here, let me pray. Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity for Cyrus, Devante, and I to get together. It's really good, and it really does speak to the groundswell of phenomenal leadership that is already here, that you are raising up and influencing the kingdom through. I pray that you would continue to give Devante wisdom as he navigates life and ministry. There's a lot coming at him, a lot of decisions that have to be made, but Lord, may he be one that really is attentive to your voice and really quick to, as he's going to talk about, to move to just not only being inspired, but to executing. So we commit this time to you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
So I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, Cyrus.
Yeah.
And then Devante, I'll let you go. I'm just grabbing it.
Cyrus Simmons. I attend Kennesaw State University. I'm a rising senior, studying psychology. I got into this program. I've been a SOAR member of the church, working at the sports and fitness department. It's a sports and fitness ministry. And then, and we had presented the opportunity to do global with this. And, we're doing a global here. We organize this. We do a lot of summer lunch programs through bus ministries. We work with them and organize, lunches for the communities out there. And then we also provide hot lunches for the kids at camp over at Star Sea Center. And I've been looking for a calling to, sort of to serve in a different, platform, just to, get a different exposure to it. And it's been great so far. Just getting a different field of ministry and serving, and just learning more about impact at the end of the day with these kids, and really just shedding a light onto them and being a good influence. So that's been great this summer, and I'm just figuring things out right now, and things are great. So
That's good, man. That's good, man. Giving out hot meals.
yeah,
Hot meals. I do that sometimes. I
uh-huh.
give out some meals sometimes.
Okay.
That's good. That's good, man. That's good. That's good. Kennesaw, you said rising senior. What is your major?
Psychology.
Psychology. Okay, psychology. Man, I switched from psychology.
Really?
I first year in school, I'd never forget it. It was Psych 102. professor, he started talking about rats and animals. And I was like, no, this is not what I want to do. I said, who knew? I said, I just want to sit down and talk to people on couches. I didn't know how to sit here and talk about animals and pedigree charts and rats. I said, nope, I'm not doing it. I switched on out to political science, but that's funny, man. That's good stuff. That's good stuff, man. Man, actually, funny enough, I think at that point in my life, going into my senior year, I feel like I was probably in the same headspace as you. I was figuring it out. At that point in my life, I was I think I had not an internship. I think I was working like the Democratic Party of Georgia, like doing fundraising for political campaigns and asking people if they wanted to give to. At that time, it was a failing state of Georgia. Like, Democrats, like it was a lost cause. We had a lost cause script because every time we went to somebody and asked them for money, they would say, "What's the point? Georgia's a lost cause," and then boom, we would have a response for that. And that was an interesting summer. But that was going into my senior year, figuring out what I wanted to do with next steps. It was a scary time because I was leaving college, and I don't know if you feel that yet, but like that last year for me, at least, it was a very like traumatic time because I was like, man, I'm leaving like this incubator process. I'm leaving the nest for real. Like I thought you was leaving the nest when you leave your house, leave, your parents' house or wherever and go to college. It was actually when I left college, I was like, man, this is a real world and I got to figure it out. Or I thought I did. But that's congratulations though, man. Congratulations on making it this far.
Appreciate
Accomplishment, man. So Devante, I am been working in this nonprofit church space for full time for the last 5 years. It's been 5 years, man. 5 years. Started as an intern. I started as an intern in this context, and then transitioned into the role that I am now, which is kind of doing outreach and community engagement. And so I've been working in this capacity for 5 years, but went undergrad here in Atlanta. I'm from Youngstown, Ohio, which is a small city in the Rust Belt, and born and raised there. Decided I want to come down to Atlanta and do something different with my life because Youngstown is this big, and I wanted to branch out. And so came down here to Atlanta, went to Morehouse, loved my experience there, and went on to seminary at Emory, and that was challenging but great. A lot of stuff happened during that time for me, good and otherwise, but it was all for the glory of God. I got a beautiful daughter out of that time.
Congratulations.
And life was what it was. So, but that was a great time. And then I'm newly engaged, man. That's what you heard Corn ask about. Wedding. I'm newly engaged, man. This is about month 5 or 6 engaged. So that's experience and learning every day. So yeah, man, that's me. I love God and I love people. I love community. I love connecting people.
Yeah.
And that's me in a nutshell for now, man. Corey, I know this time we want to kind of talk about the topic that I brought to you. So is there no format, right? We just jump into it. You want to?
It really is, man. It's one of the things that I think is difficult for people. Like, so, man, man. Let me say this. I told Lee, man, if I was a headhunter, I'd come for Cyrus, right? Devante, I'd come for him. You know me. I would come for him, man. So I think, he's first round draft pick, right? So, and so, hey, which is great, but then you don't oftentimes have a chance to kind of go, so, there's college, and then, Cyrus played football, Devante played football. Okay. And so there's I was just having a conversation with someone this weekend about football players and people on the line. And they said, when you're in college, you can just kind of manhandle someone if you're a certain way. But then when you go to the pros, man, everyone is as big as you, as strong as you, and they're faster the most humans, you
Mm.
know, and so there's a different speed at the next level. So, one of the things that I would say to you is just kind of like, hey, I'd love to kind of, hey, you can have some opening, share what you want to share as it relates to your topic, but then it's just some conversation. Because, like you had access, I told him about Josh being my mentor. And so, I mean, you had access to Josh, right?
Yeah.
Just the value of that. So
Yeah.
that's really what this time is about. So go ahead, bro.
Oh man, yeah. I say, Cyrus, I think first, man, what an opportunity you have, and how valued you are to be in this space. That is something that everybody doesn't get. And I think one of the reasons, I can't speak for Corn, but I know his heart is that he wants this for so many young men, Black men particularly. This is Corn's heart, to put young brothers of color in spaces where they're doing things and running things. He told that to me since day one. And to take this time is very, very special, man. And for me, honestly, don't take it lightly. Don't take it lightly, because this is it's like a running start, man. You get a clear, almost like you get a clear runway, man. Almost. There's still gonna be, it's still gonna be stuff. Let me say, it's still gonna be some stuff.
Yeah.
That's gonna be in your way, but the reality is, you get a coach along the way. Hey man, you may want to take off a little bit early. Hey, you may want to land. Some things to be on watch of, and I think honestly for me, that's kind of the way I've learned most of my life is observation and coaching. Some things I ain't gotta go through just because of something I just don't have to go through. I can listen and use that wisdom. And so Corn knows I'll call him in the moment and ask for wisdom. And I call him a wise sage. He feels like he learns from me, but I learn from him. And that's how it's supposed to be, that reciprocity. But yeah, man, that access is definitely important. One thing I was just thinking about when you said, that access and being able to understand the speed of the game. Like, one of the biggest things that was different when I left high school and came here, I was in Youngstown, small town. I mean, it's small town. Anything I did or anything anybody else did, it was just, that's the top level. Like, that's it. Like, I mean, that's and the culture shift, the environment shift of coming to Atlanta and being in a place like Morehouse. A lot of brothers, similar to the analogy, is you ain't the only person doing it. You ain't the only person that got it going on. You ain't the only person who has that went with class president, valedictorian, and all-star and all-American. That ain't the story, because every other brother has a story very similar to yours. And now is navigating this big lake, right? And being another fish in that lake and having the conversation about, well, where do I find my place and how do I engage and how do I really stand out? That was always something because there's competition, man. It's intrinsic in us, right? To try to compete with the next guy, to try to outplay, outsmart, outthink what somebody else is doing. And that was a struggle of mine for the longest, because I wanted to outpace and beat everybody. But the more and more I've grown, I realized that we tried to compete with everybody. We tried to outpace everybody because we didn't understand the game plan, especially for us. Like, actually, there's power in our collaboration and understanding our roles. And if I could have understood that, man, probably would have made a lot of different decisions in college. A lot of play moves. Corn says there's a lot of play moves. Looking at, man, what's the grand scheme, man? I'll give you an example. One of the things that one of my professors told me to do, and I didn't do because I'm trying to run my own plays, right? Said, hey, Devante, you need to, and this is in the West End, Morehouse is in the West End. Hey, you need to get a couple brothers. Y'all need to go buy some property in the West End. And need to sit on it for a few years and sell it. This is 2012, 11. Cyrus, Corn, guess how much properties were? And I mean, and properties were around that West End area. Vacant properties. I'm not even talking about, don't even do nothing to them. Go down there once a month, cut the grass, and just let it sit. It was about 10 grand.
Shut up.
10 to 15 grand. I kid you not. 10 to 15 grand for those properties. Guess how much most of those properties have been sold for in a matter of 5 to 7 years? $200,000 that land, right? Wow. They're doing, gentrifying. They're doing some revitalization in the West End. They stuck up the historic sign. And historic West End, things are changing when you see those historic signs, right? But I thought about it, and it wasn't just about the money, it was about the strategy, right? Mm-hmm. Strategy was run together, like run together and watch what happens. And refund checks weren't spent on that. Right. Refund checks weren't spent on that. Refund checks was, you got it, you got that. And we waited late, man, for our refund checks. Morehouse was slow, man. HBCUs, they could be a little slow in the financial department. Yeah. You got to go a couple times before you get a response. And so went a few times, got it right before homecoming, all that jazz when it comes to that. But the strategy, man, was to run a long game. And many times, obviously, we don't think that long game. And that actually kind of, man, feed. And I'm going to, at any point, interject what I'm saying, because I realize even this conversation, what I'm saying leads into what my thought process when Corn asked me, man, what is something that you would like to hear? You would have liked to sit and understand at that point of your development. And that's a small example of, man, what could have taken you from getting together with some other guys, buying some property in college, and now making that a 6-figure strategy, right? And it was the idea that you could have an inspiration, an idea, but the follow-up is where I lacked, man. And that's a leadership trait, man. Like, that's a leadership strategy. That's a real game plan, man. Because there's a lot of ideas that I've had, a lot of moments where inspirational moments, thinking out loud or thinking inside to yourself. And you're like, man, that would be cool. Or you really feel drawn to do X, Y, and Z for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. But then the follow-up, what next, right? It's just where do we go from here? It would have been a great idea to buy property, but then what? It's a great idea. Okay, what's next? How do I find it? What is the game plan? And that's kind of where I hung my hat, because I would have loved to understand strategy around that time. And this is important, because especially for our generation, because even you're borderline, what is it? You're Gen Zer.
Z.
Or yeah, Z. Okay, we're probably like, it ain't that much of a difference. You're probably like 2 years outside the millennial generation, right? Yeah. But we're not short of creativity.
That's right.
And innovation. Not short of it. It's not a scarce resource. Creativity is not a scarce resource. Everybody has it in some way or capacity. Mm-hmm. The ideas, wake up in the middle of the night, you got an idea. Wake up in the morning, you got an idea. See something, you got an idea. And the reality is, though, that for me, what I've understood is that inspiration without the execution is just a good idea. This is really what it is, man. It's just, it sounds good. It looks good. Most time you can, quote unquote, see the product, quote unquote, see the end product. It's like, man, how cool would that look? How great would that be? But without the tools, it's just a great idea. And I want to challenge that, man, for you. And I wanted to challenge myself. I want to challenge that for myself. It's like, man, no, you got to have the game plan. You got to have the toolkit for it. And so I'll use an example. And I was reading this, Corn, in kind of preparation for this, is the story of Nehemiah in scripture. And we could talk about the building of the wall and all that type of stuff, but it was really focusing on how this idea got started
Mm.
and what this was really about. Well, if you don't know the story of Nehemiah, you know, he's a prophet of some sort that we claim as one, but he was one that revitalized, rebuilt this wall for Jerusalem. But we always talk about building a wall. We always talk about the product. But I realized I never sat down and looked at the process.
Mhm.
You know, the process was actually more important than the product in some regards, because it was the preparation that made that possible.
Yeah.
And particularly in the first 3 chapters of Nehemiah, Nehemiah is in a position, pay attention to that, he's in a position to actually have an idea work for it. Like, Nehemiah is the king's cupbearer. I mean, he has proximity to influence. His proximity to influence. Everybody doesn't have that, right? Even what is it? Nehemiah 2 particularly. I think it's the first verse. Yeah, in the month of Nisan.
Yep.
Nehemiah 2 and 1. So in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was being served, he said, I carried the wine and gave it to the king. Now, I had never been this sad. The first thing that I really see is that he had proximity. I mean, he literally had proximity to the king. But it's very important to me, like what he says after. He says, now I've never been sad in this king's presence before. So the king said to him, why is your face sad since you are not sick? This can only be sadness of the heart. And I said, man, like how amazing that was for Nehemiah to not only have proximity to influence, but also for the influence to recognize his burden. Because I think that's almost the first part of understanding how to move from innovation or inspiration to execution, is that you have to know what your burden is. You got to know what your burden is.
Mhm.
You got to have one. And I don't know, Corn probably, I know being around Corn, you'll hear this a lot. You'll hear mission a lot. If you haven't already, you'll hear that word mission. And that's something that I remember, Corn, you and I sitting down about multiple times. Particularly, the question that he had for me was, what burdens you? You know, like what keeps you up at night?
I think I posed it.
Um,
Hopefully I said, what problem are you here to solve?
yeah.
Exactly. What problem are you here to solve?
That's a good way.
And
Thank you for those, Devante. What burdens you? I'll make a note of that so that I can run that back. Sometimes Devante, we said it today. Hey man, come on in, Devante. Man, hey, blah 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 blah. So I'll make sure I put that in my little question. Thank you, question bank. Thank you.
No, that's I sometimes, sometimes we hear it and then we filter it a different way. So you probably said, what you said, and I heard, man, what burdens you? Like what's keeping you up at night? Because that's part of the idea to me. That's part of the inspiration. That's where you draw it from. And for Nehemiah, particularly though, I think it's more so in chapter 1, verse 4. He said, when I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for days. He's talking about his people, fasting and praying before God of heaven. He's praying, he's crying out because of the state of his people, from captivity. Like, this is keeping this dude up. And I saw burden there. Like I saw a thought, right? It's like the inception of it. And I know we can get into scriptural things, but like Nehemiah, Esther, like kind of tied together. But the reality is, in this part of understanding Nehemiah, it's a true burden on his heart. Like, and there breaks out innovation, there breaks out the thought to say, like, man, what can I do about this? I don't know, man. Have you ever felt or had? Let me ask you this: what do you feel like you have something that burdens you?
I think just, because I feel like I'm missing that male presence at home. I have a male presence. I have my dad. He had some things happen to him a few years back. He had a stroke when I was in like the 5th grade, and things kind of changed from there for our family. My mom kind of had to step up and take that kind of leadership role from him, because he was unable to do certain things that man should do in the house, physically, and then he's dealing with some things, with his brain. He's not able to, just articulate in a way that he used to. So he's just not doing what he needs to be doing to sort of like get better. And I feel like he's kind of missing the true meaning of life, really. Like, he's so focused on, he's also an alcoholic as well. He's really kind of letting that control, his days moving forward. And I don't know, like, he's not really doing his job well as a dad. So I think really just, especially how fatherhood is nowadays, like a lot of dads aren't in the household, a lot of dads aren't, just there to raise the kids and, teach them the principles of life. So I feel like I've had the burden was kind of like teaching myself those principles, in my journey. And, that's kind of been like hard, as a kid, kind of growing into that and sort of being different in a way, trying to, emulate my friends, be happy just like they are. But really, I'm just feel like that's been a weight, to carry for a while. And always, and also just worrying about his health, with his alcohol issue, like really, just seeing what he's doing. He's not motivated, to get better physically, that, like, where's his mind at, and then when you see your dad in a different headspace than you, that's kind of like, it's like, wow, I don't want to feel like I'm better than you. I want to look up to you, type of deal, and that's kind of been a burden I've always felt like. But and obviously my parents' marriage is up and down. Every marriage is up and down. And just seeing, okay, this is, these are ways that he's showing that I don't want to present. These are things that he's doing these things, and I don't want to do it myself. So I'm looking at him in like a negative sense, but I really don't want to. I really want to help him, but ultimately he has to help himself. Every person has to help himself in a way. So if that makes sense, like, as far as the burden goes, just fatherhood, really, leadership, kind of having to like, learn it myself in a way. And I can appreciate it, man, like Corn just coming into this program with me and just, just picking his brain and learning from him and taking on lessons and all that. It's just good. So I think just that male presence in my life, I feel like that's kind of missing, if that makes sense.
And Devante, he also said this to Cyrus's credit. Again, he's first round draft pick, Devante. Let me just say that. What problem are you here to solve? He wants to connect people back to Jesus, back to the source, to draw people in. That people who are lost spiritually.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah. That's I think Corn, and quote me, well, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was always something that was very strong in the idea of mission, like that it wasn't just about like what you're going to do. Like, it is not I'm going to be a all-star football player, and then I'm going to play the pros, and then I'm going to do this. It's not about the what. I mean, but mission is connected to the who's of life. Who am I impacting? Who am I connecting? Who am I helping to put or lay at the feet of Jesus? It's it's the push to the who. And from hearing you, there's a lot of push giving your surroundings, your narrative that is pushing you towards that who. There's a lot that you saw, that you've seen in your life that has made your heart troubled, if I could put it that way. You know, made your heart troubled to say, yeah, that's not what I see as ideal for people. Like if this is what I'm seeing in my life, I know this is not what I want for myself. I know this is not what I want for other young men, whatever the case may be, this is what I'm seeing. I don't want to continue. And that is the start of a strong burden, man. That's definitely the start of connecting people to Jesus.
Yeah.
That's definitely it, man. That's definitely the start of it. And yeah, man, knowing that mission, like knowing that burden and being connected to it is important. Understanding that is.
How did that get clear for you? Your burden.
Yeah, of course. I realize, and I'll say one of my burdens is lack of equity in our society. There's a strong burden for the least of these for me. There's a strong burden for those who are pushed aside and marginalized. And I want to say, for me, the moment that it clicked, or I started to understand, because I think Corn, you'll say I came in as like a fireball in New Mercies, like, you know, Morehouse, everybody, you know, it was intrinsic. Like, you know, we're going to start a revolution everywhere we go. You know, you just want to light a fire and run, you know? But the reality was, for me, when I actually had the touch points, like being able to sit and have proximity with folks who, if one bad move, I could be them. Like one missed paycheck, I could potentially be them. You know what I'm saying? It was having proximity with people who are suffering that made me realize this is what God has called me to. And then connecting them to the places and the people that can give them resources, that can encourage and disciple them as well in whatever capacity, because that doesn't just mean I'm going to be in church doing this, right? Corn has a saying. What's Corn? You have a saying.
Comes out where you at.
Who you are comes out where you at, right? And I realized that's so much more. So that is so much more important, that I understand that my mission, my passion, my burden for marginalized people is going to come out in whatever space that I am, whether it's in a church context, whether I'm sitting here doing work that I'm doing now, outreach, whether I help to help run a nonprofit resource center that does weekly food programs. I get some wonderful and amazing volunteers there. But then I realize I also sit with people who are fighting for voting rights. Right? I'm also sitting with people who don't have adequate health care. And we're trying to connect them with resources to say, hey, this is where you can go. Hey, this is what is available to you. And so for me, it was that proximity. It was me being in spaces that showed me that without the grace of God, so go I. So I'm in the same boat as them. And so I feel like that was a moment that it clicked for me personally, that's what mission was for me. That's what mission was for me. And how I'm living that out, it's that target, that goal may change, but the mission is going to be the same. You know, in this context, that may be, hey, Devante, help to connect people in this congregation to seeing the community better. We want to connect them to that they're serving more, that they are more connected to the community they say they live in, they want to serve. Connect them. Cool. The mission is not going to be the same. When I leave here, the mission is still going to be the same: to connect people, marginalized people, give them resources, give them access. So that's ultimately the gospel to me. That's ultimately the gospel. That's putting people at the feet of Jesus, because we are reflections of Christ in whatever capacity. So for me, that is a part of that missional understanding for my life. But I will say, man, another part of that inspiration to like execution moment is knowing the partners, like knowing who you have on your team.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Unpack this idea of team. And again, I'll say this, and partly, Cyrus is bumping into terminology, right? Hanging out with us, right?
Yeah.
And so mission, remember I started with him in my little session, I talked about the Apostle Paul, about the idea that his mission stayed the same, but his platform changed. He did it as an evangelist, he did it as a pastor, but most of his influence to the Gentiles, the burden that he had, the calling that he had, was while in jail as an author, right? So your platform can change, right? Boom, boom, boom. And so, Devante, as you think about proximity, what I wrote down was this: it was both proximity to need and proximity to resources that kind of helped, shape and form, calling, man.
Yeah.
And then you said here, knowing who's on your team. And so unpack this idea of team, because you just mentioned 3 ways you're living out your mission: church, voters' rights, and help. So are those 3 different teams? And if so, how does Cyrus go about identifying who's on his team?
Yeah. What is it? God calls you to a who, not a what. Same terminology in my mind is that where God provides the inspiration, where God provides the vision, God will also provide the provision. And the provision is not always in the financial resources, but it's in the relational resources that God places in those places. So for me, those buckets are filled with different teams. They're people in that arena that God has assigned to me for that space. Some overlap because of the context. Some are not in the same context, but they are understood and connected to the same vision and mission that I have to see the furtherance of people who are marginalized and ostracized and seeing them empowered. And so I think the team is also about who you open yourself up to in relationship. Like, and I'm using the example of Nehemiah because I think after the king asked Nehemiah what was wrong, Nehemiah also had the space to share his burden, to share what was going on. And I think it even says that the king was also with the queen, which is important to know in that sense because it showed the intimate space that Nehemiah was in.
Yep.
He had an audience, not just with anybody. It wasn't just anybody who he was talking to or sharing his burden with. It was a safe, intimate space that he was sharing his burden with. And I think that's important for the team because the team is those who can also handle what you're talking about, handle that load too. Now they may not have the same burden as you, but they can sit and share your burden. They can listen, they can share your weight. And listen, they may not be able to take it, but they can share it in listening and being present with you. And so what I said about competition and how if I understood the game plan when I was in college, I probably would have I probably would have had the right team. I probably would have found the team that was supposed to be around me. But one thing I do understand is that your team can't be jealous of you. Like you can't have a team who's envious of the burden that you have or the drive that you have to do whatever it is that God has called you to do, whatever mission you're supposed to fulfill, whatever mission God has given you to fulfill. That has to be a safe place for you. And I think God gives you those people, and you will see who those people are when you share that burden. When you share, man, this is what I've been thinking about. This is what my heart is drawn to. And they say, man, I don't know. I may not share the same burden, but man, how can I help walk with you to see this through?
We had our last presenter talked about extending your reach, being able, which is really the Devante at networking.
Yeah.
It was really, which, gentlemen, I would say to you, if there was one skill I would want to pass on to anybody, it'd be how to build a network. And look, your network, you will only burden, but proximity, like you said, Devante, proximity comes about as a result of networking. I am only as, like most of my jobs I get not because I'm brilliant or qualified, but it's because of networking, relationship. Look, we're on here today. I mean, hey, Devante, can you do this? Boom. Hey, Corin, can you do a podcast? Boom. And that's the reciprocity that's come because we built a network. And so Devante, so if Devante's out there running the world, here's the thing. So you've met Devante. Devante's met you. Now your network is opening up. And Devante, did you write that down, Devante, about that jealous? You wrote that down?
I did not write that down.
Hey, make
write it down.
That's because I really think your team can't be jealous of you, because the only way to accomplish this, we have to continue to network and to collaborate. If people are jealous, they'll hoard. The king and the queen are not intimidated by the burden. Please, bro, what do you need? They weren't intimidated. Now then you go out there to do some work, Tobias and Sambalat.
Yep. Now you got to be
careful. Them jokers wanted to be on the team too. Hey man,
they wanted to.
They want to be on the team.
And the interesting thing about that, Corin, is that they wanted to be on the team, and Nehemiah knew who wasn't supposed to be on his team.
That's exactly right. And that's why, Devante, that's why I thought it was a good line that you write that down. Because you can't just because they want to say, hey, I want to be on your team. The line I said, everybody, I heard this word came to me. Everybody can't go with you.
It's true.
Man, it is. But you know what though? Even though we know it, Devante knows it, I know it, we still don't always, because if they come, and I could go into all kinds of things. Sometimes how they come to you, you feel like, man, let me help them out. Or, hey, let me, versus being courageous and prayerful enough to say, nah, man, you can't. Nah, man, Devante, you can't. Like, there's some jokers up there, Devante, nah, man, you ain't coming with me, man.
Man, I can't even share what I'm doing.
Yeah, thank you.
I can't even share what I'm doing. And that's not being secretive. That's being intentional. That's being intentional.
Write that down, Devante. Write that one down too.
Yeah, I know. I'm writing down a lot of stuff. I'll be saying stuff. I'm like, man,
hey, man, that's good, man. Look, hey, I'm taking notes.
That's being intentional. The funny thing is, and this, I'm thank God that we're talking about Nehemiah, because I think Nehemiah, before everybody else knew, that was with him, because the king did send him with people, right? Guards, an army, a small little troop, sent him with him to go and do what he needed to do. And it said that he went out at night to survey what was needed. Let me check, right? Let me survey. And he went out at night. It wasn't until he came back and said, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to do it. And this was intentional too, because think about what it meant for Nehemiah is in a position where his people have been exiled. And him, even in that position, he has to be careful about how he approaches the king,
That's good.
right? He has to be careful because at any point they can misjudge him wanting to go and rebuild the wall for Jerusalem as a threat to their nation.
Good word.
Like, he had to be very intentional. Understand, Nehemiah didn't even mention to the king that he wanted to build the wall. He just said, I have a burden for my people.
Yeah. Ooh.
He was very strategic about how he talked about his burden, because he understood if he said the wrong thing, that it could be shut down. If he said the wrong thing at the wrong time, that idea would have been gone, because they said, wait, because even his enemies, they came back and they said the same thing. And they said, hey, you're doing this because you want to rebel against the king? They even saw it as a threat. But the reality is Nehemiah understood the language of how he was communicating his idea, his inspiration. This burden that he had to communicate it a certain way in order to get the provision that he needed for it. And that's the strength of the right team as well. Again, that's the strength of the right team, because they can share in that.
Come on, me, just walking through. Sorry about that. All right. Thanks, man.
Devante, write that one down, man. That was dope. Hey, write that one down, bro. Hey, let me repeat it back to you. Be strategic about how you talk about your burden. Woo, Devante.
Man.
Hey, that is
I mean, corn. But think about how many times, Corn, you've had something, man, I want to do boom, 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 boom. And you like, wait. Or, I mean, I've made the mistake. I'll say it for me personally, because I think that's from experience for me. I said the wrong thing to the wrong people at the wrong time. Let me rephrase it. I said the right thing to the wrong people at the wrong time.
Yep.
It was good. I think it was truly an idea. It was something I was really fired and passionate about, and I shared it with the wrong people at the wrong time. And be careful, because sometimes that can suffocate that idea. It can suffocate that inspiration. Not saying it can't make it happen, because I mean, we've seen in scripture references that you can share something and it can drive somebody to jealousy, but it just sometimes just pulls you close to your purpose, Joseph, right? You can share it with the wrong people. It's the right idea. But yeah, there's something for me that I've learned, like, man, sometimes you gotta lay low. You gotta put your head down, and you gotta grind at what it is that is on your heart. Because God is already providing. God's going to provide where you need, but you also need to understand how to control, you know? Everybody doesn't need to know everything all the time.
Hey, Devante,
Yeah.
It's a 2:55.
Yeah.
You know, man, look, bro. I'm
glad we can go all day, man. This is good space, Cyrus.
Hey, you coming off the dome with some good stuff. But to honor your time, and I know Cyrus has got to get on to some stuff. There are 3 questions that I'm asking him to ask every leader. And so let me go ahead and just put a comma there, and I'll send you this recording, man, so you can go back and go, man, because Devante, some good stuff.
Man.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, man.
All right. So as a leader, when was it when you realized you needed help in your progression, in your journey? When did you realize you needed help?
Oh man, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
The abstract answer is when I realized that I couldn't do it myself. Yeah. Was there a moment that I felt like that? Man, it was many moments that I felt like that. But I think when I realized that when I let go of my pride in the situation, when I understood that I'm not the smartest person in the room, a part of that sharing that burden for me was being in the room with people who I trusted and was wiser than me in many places. When I step in the room with Corn and Josh, I know, first of all, it's a safe place. But second of all, I know in some experience, most experience, I'm not the smartest person. And I submit to it. I let go of I take off this prideful flesh, man. That comes with being a man. Yeah.
Okay, so man, yet everything you just said is counterintuitive to what it means to be a Morehouse man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This, I don't think, like, I love the Wells and what they try to aspire, but it can breed a pride. Being that Renaissance man that they talk about, right?
Yeah.
Me against the world, I'm setting everything on fire. So how does one reconcile the good of trying to help you have a healthy self-image, trust and believe in the skill set, and not succumb to being independent?
Yeah. I mean, pride and confidence are close cousins. They look alike depending on your context. Like, depending on who you're around, it can feed one or the other. And for me, I didn't connect with everybody. I'm a connector. I love to connect with people. But one thing I'm glad I didn't do when I was at Morehouse is I didn't connect with everybody.
Yeah.
Because for some people, that's how they thrive. To this day, people still think that because they were part of a Greek organization on campus, that they have some type of clout, man. It's crazy. I'm 5 years out. Some people 7, 10 years out, and they will still walk around, right? Letters blazing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, and don't dare it be homecoming, man. Homecoming, coming back, right? But what I realized that they never changed their circle that entire time either.
Oh, good point.
Yes, good point.
You have the same circle. It's not all bad, but if you have the same circle that feeds the same thing, if that thing is still feeding your college person, it's not the right. It's just not the right circle. Mm-hmm. And for me, I had a group of men and brothers around me who didn't feed my ego. Like, I had to relinquish that because I have a friend who would tell me, man, that's not a good idea. And you may want to watch yourself, because if you do this, man, it's not going to turn out well for you. I had a friend my friend is married, and we hold each other accountable because he said, man, like, listen, I'm married, you engaged, man. Listen, you can't be going around going out and doing whatever we want to do with any other women. Right? That's a different level of accountability, man. That just strips you, man. It strips you. That's why the team thing is important, man. It strips you of all what you think you got. You ain't got nothing, man. You just as low as everybody else, man. And that's it's to humble you. Say, man,
exactly.
No, man, we see you, and we're gonna hold you accountable to your mission.
Yeah. Second question.
So as a leader, what does self-care look like to you?
Oh,
self-care.
Oh, man, therapy. Oh,
yeah.
Therapy. Black men need therapy. Let me say that again. Black men, all men need therapy.
For sure.
Man, all men need therapy, man. Find you, and it's cool to have other brothers you talk to, but when you got to go and sit down in a controlled environment where somebody asks you questions, no, man, that's self-care. Was me understanding that I couldn't handle everything by myself. Mm-hmm. I can't just talk in my head about everything. I gotta talk these things out loud in a professional environment too. Sometimes we just like to go to listen, I'm not knocking pastors. I'm not knocking your best friend. I'm not knocking people that we just call our mentors, but man, you need a professional sometimes to sit down with and work through your stuff, man. And so for me, yeah, counseling was very important. When I started seminary, it's the same semester I started counseling. And it took a couple counselors for me to find the one that I could really dig in with. But once I found that, man, it was worth gold, man. It was worth gold.
What you did, man. I went to this one, and this is what I said. So nice. She was, man, y'all, man, she was real nice. She was asking me, I said, man, let me ask you this. And then let me cut to the quick. If this is really, I said, it's okay if I cuss, because a lot of profanity is connected to a lot of my emotions. Is that okay? And the lady said, you're fine. I said, okay, but we can get down there.
Yeah.
To be, in other words, can I bring all of who I am to the session? Because if I have to manage me, then I really So that's right.
Yeah.
I agree. That's good. That's good. What's your last question?
What's your vision of your city or community 50 years from now?
Man, that's it. That's it. You can knock all the pins down with that one, man. Wow. Man, it's easy to say I want my community, my city to look better. But that's still abstract to me. What do I want it to be? I want it to be a safe place for my daughter and her kids to thrive. I want it to be a place where we don't just talk about what we're going to do, but we actually create a game plan for what we're going to do. And so, world peace for all, that's great. That sounds great. But I pray that my daughter is in a space where she actually understands the impact and sees the impact that I've made and the sacrifices that I made. Whether that's locally, globally, nationally, however she sees that impact, I hope that she is able to pick that up and to make that whatever she wants it to be, and whatever future kids that I have, that they're able to do that as well, and to change the world one person at a time. I have big dreams, but I realize that big dreams also have local people connected to them. It's about Cyrus and me sharing and pouring into Cyrus that's going to make Cyrus's kids and those that they impact much better 50 years from now. And so I hope that these connection better for Noella, because if Cyrus is better, then I know Noella is better. That's my daughter's name. I know Noella is going to be better. And so, roundabout way, 50 years from now, I hope that that I've made such an impact that my daughter feels the glory of that. She lives in that, and she can share that with somebody else. So I hope that was good. I hope that answered it, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. Bro. I mean, like, hey, man, that was good, man. I'll send you the recording, man. It is just an honor. I mean, really is. You see why, man. See, hanging out with people like this, man. So it's good, and it's reciprocal. We just and so. But Devante, I just want to say thank you, man. Thank you for your commitment to doing the work here. Cyrus, I say to him that my little institution talk, it all starts with us. Hudson, and he wants Noella, to carry on, man. He's bringing someone into his space. He's trying to do good work in partnership. And so Cyrus is doing that work too. May you be found faithful. And so, hey, bro, well, I appreciate you, man. Here, let me pray us out and we'll get about here. Hey, Lord, thank you so much for Devante. Man, wow, what a testimony to the great work you've been doing in his life. As he said, when he walked through the doors of New Mercies, he was trying to burn up everything in front of it. And now, Lord Jesus, it's not that the fire has kind of doused it all, but Lord, he's very intentional. I thank you that he is following your footsteps and emulating Nehemiah, and out of prayer and contemplation and leveraging the proximity to resources to be able to alleviate the burden that Noella and her friends and their children will have the infrastructure in place that they would be safe. Thank you for the things that Cyrus and I have heard today. May we chew on them and be bold to not just come up with ideas, but as Devante said, execute. Watch over us the rest of the day. We love you and thank you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Appreciate y'all. Cyrus,
Right on, bro.
man.
That was
we
dope,
connected,
man.
man.
Okay,
That was
man.
dope.
All right,
All right,
talk to you later.
Appreciate it, man.
All right.
Sir.